guys, welcome back to our Liberty House. My name's Beth, and today I'm going to be showing you guys our September garden tour, but today's garden tour is a little bit of a different format than some of our past garden tours. And if you've been following, you understand that today's video is going to be our first episode in our fall garden tour playlist series. So if you want to see what we've done all summer, go to our playlist page and check out all of our summer garden tour videos. But today's video, I'm really going to show you guys how we've prepped all of our garden beds and planted for fall, for the fall growing season. So you guys saw weeks ago, probably, I don't even know, 6 to 8 weeks ago, we started a lot of our fall seeds indoors. And we're ready to plant them out. We've kind of been waiting on the weather to cooperate, and finally that heat wave is gone and cooler temps have come. We've actually gotten a lot of rain this weekend, which is fabulous. And so Lucas and I have been in the garden the last few days, kind of trimming up a lot of our summer crops. We have a few of them in still. You can see the tomatoes behind me, but we're going to show you kind of what it looked like before, how we tore it all out, harvesting some compost, top dressing a lot of our beds, fertilizing, and then planting out all of these fall seedlings. So really excited to share this with you, and I hope you enjoy. Okay guys, it is like mid-September, and I just wanted to show you kind of what our garden is looking like right now. We are planning to start cleaning up a lot of this trellis stuff and a lot of our summer crops that have really just come to the end of their life. And I wanted to show you what they look like prior to us cleaning up the garden in preparation for fall. So it'll be just kind of an abbreviated version of that really quick. So you can see here, this bed has the echinaceas. I haven't done anything with this yet, but planning to dig it out and harvest some of the root. The rudbeckia is looking still pretty good. Could use a dead head, but kind of planning to either cut and separate this or transplant it to a different location, just because it's taking up a lot of this bed. Same with this thyme. I think I've talked about this in past videos. I'm just ready to regain some of this bed space. I think we're planning to plant our garlic and onions here in this bed. Let me show you kind of this back trellis. So this is what housed our tomatillos, which, let me give you a close-up view, is kind of looking just tired. It's starting to get some aphid action and just some kind of powdery mildewiness. But planning to kind of tear this out. It's really not producing a whole lot. We still have a few like husks on here, like this one's good. But we'll harvest what we have and then probably just pull out the rest. These tomatoes are done. They haven't produced anything. This butternut is trying to stay alive, but I think we're just gonna pull it. We have plenty of center cut squash to utilize. Over here in this bed, we are gonna leave these peppers in place. These are some of our hot peppers. We may actually just stake it up a little bit better too, but some of these are looking really good. Even though, you know, that heat wave we got here in Sacramento, we got some sun scald on a few of them. It's still really starting to pump out all these peppers. They love the heat. And these Thai chilies are looking really good. I'm really excited to have some good Thai chili harvest this year. And then we'll probably leave some of the zinnias. They're still flowering and will do good, really good for the pollinators. And then I'll plant some more fall-loving, cool season type flowers too. Okay, now our arch trellis this summer was our tomato tunnel. The heat really slowed it down. High temps, typically over, I'm sure there's an actual temperature, but I know triple digits, all of the flowers are gonna drop. So if you experience that, don't feel like you're alone or anything. We had it too. They're still kind of ripening, just at a much slower rate. Here's a green zebra back there that is ready to get harvested. And the large red cherry tomatoes that we planted have gotten some sort of disease. They completely just dried out. So these are for sure gonna go, and I think the rest we are planning to probably just prune up a bit and see, you know, about getting a late harvest type harvest out of them. Underneath, you guys saw last month we planted some beans, which have been annihilated with leaf miners. So I'm not sure if they'll make it, but hopefully once we kind of trim up and limb up some of the tomato plants, we'll be able to get a better look. Like this one is doing much better, and it's just kind of unfortunately intertwined with some of the tomatoes. So hopefully we can redirect it to the trellis, and it'll be a lot cleaner and easier to see once we have it a little tidier. So that's kind of what's happening in here. Let me move around to the other side. You can see we pulled out our green waste bin, we're ready to go and cleaning. We were weeding earlier now that the temps are a lot cooler. This bed has been kind of empty for a while. We attempted to direct sow some fall crops, like some beets, some parsnips. None of them germinated, or they germinated and then quickly died because of the heat. I do have some sunflowers that are trying to stay alive. And we have our basil that's still looking pretty good. We'll probably keep that in as well. And then the flowers we'll keep too, and just kind of clean up. I'll dig up my dahlia tubers, and then amend this bed. All right, and then over here is our pumpkins. And if you've been following us, you know this thing has gotten wild. I underestimated the amount of space that pumpkins need. Obviously, it's kind of just taken over. We keep kind of kicking some of those vines back to maintain some sort of a path to the back part of our garden. I've harvested most pumpkins. I have gotten like 4 or 5 nice orange pumpkins. We do have a few pumpkins still going. This one's super small, but I honestly think it might be about ready to harvest. And I have another one in here. I believe these are my white pumpkins because they haven't turned any sort of color. They're still pretty green and kind of white, illuminating white. So, oh, and you can see right here some ladybugs getting it on. And some eggs there too. But I'll show you, the pumpkin area has become a ladybug haven right now. We have so many aphids over here, and I'm letting them go. Here's another ladybug. If I spend too much time here, I can just count hundreds of them, I bet. But yeah, these are all growing strongish. Over here is where you'll see this has just been annihilated by the aphids, and we're ready to kind of clean up this part of it. I left it alone for a bit, even though they were covered in aphids, because they had a ton of ladybug larvae feasting on them, as well as some pupa. Here's a pupa right there, and a pupa that's done with its cycle. So if you aren't familiar, there's a ladybug larva hiding in there. So the life cycle of a ladybug is pretty cool, and it's good to identify what they look like at their different stages. So eggs will hatch into larvae, which is what this little guy is right here. If I can get a good shot at him. Larvae are great because they will eat so many. You can see that's like a little baby larva. It's like super tiny. And he'll eat all of these aphids. Up here's another one right there, another larva. And then once they get to a certain size, they turn into a pupa, which is what this is right here. So it starts to look a little bit more ladybug-like, just kind of more of like a cocoon shell. And then after a couple days, it hatches into what we know as a ladybug. Ladybugs also eat a lot of aphids, which is great. So I've been kind of leaving this alone to let nature do its thing and take care of my aphid problem. But now that, I mean, these plants are completely dead, even though I still have some ladybug going on, I think I'm gonna cut it from the stem here, leave it out for a while, like a day or two, to hopefully get some of the ladybugs to leave and go elsewhere before I put it into the yard waste, because I need the space to set up for fall. So that's kind of my game plan for this area. I can't even like step in here very easily without stepping on pumpkins. Here's just another ladybug there. It's just kind of craziness, but kind of cool. It's always fun to see nature help you out with the pests. So y'all know, you've seen our tree boxes have been pretty empty for a while. We have kale here that actually reseeded from last year, which is cool. Our dead lemon tree we plan to get rid of. We also plan to harvest our Jerusalem artichokes because they've taken a lean here in the last week. So we'll be harvesting, it's like a rhizome type tuber that you harvest for those. And I think that's probably the last year we're growing them. We just don't eat them as often, or we don't eat them enough to constitute the amount of space they take. So, and then over here, we have what was my favorite bed this year, and it's just kind of tired looking. It's had a really good season, but now it's ready, I think, to transition. I'm ready for it to transition, and Lucas is ready for it to transition. So our cantaloupe is, you can see we have a totally rotten one that we missed, and I just haven't moved it to the compost bin, but the cantaloupe might be done. I'm not sure if we'll pull it or not. We have, I think, one right here and then one on the other side of this fence that's still growing, so we might leave it in and just kind of amend around it. The center cut squashes you guys have seen this year has been like our bumper crop, and we've let the rest of them just go yellow, which turns them in. So center cut is kind of an interesting variety of squash because you can harvest it when they're young. Here's one right up there, actually two right up there, when they're young, and eat them or cook them like a zucchini, like a summer squash. But if you let them grow and harden and turn this yellowish color, got another big one back there, it stores like a hard squash or like a butternut squash, and it actually tastes exactly like butternut squash, and Lucas and I really enjoy it. So I think going forward, we are going, here's a really good picture of one that's totally ready. I think we're just going to plant this next year and forego any other types of summer squash or winter squash, because we just like that this is so versatile, and we like the taste of this better at that young age, more so than a zucchini. So I think this is going to be our new jam. If you're in the area, I highly recommend it. Center cut squash. The seeds are from Row 7 Seeds. Pretty good. So I think we're just gonna let this go. We're kind of tired of squash. And even though now that it's a little cooler, I can see a couple more young ones up there. I think we'll just kind of harvest it and let it go. But this had grown all the way over here. And this section here, I think just because it's closer to that aphid infestation, has aphids on it too. So we want to try to get rid of the aphids as much as possible prior to planting out our seedlings that we started, just because they will really go after those young seedlings. So that's that. There's Liberty chilling in the yard, scratching, of course. Let me show you our last bed right over here. And on the way, I'll just give you a quick update on this volunteer pumpkin that we ended up in the compost, that when we composted or top dressed kind of this area of the bed. I wasn't sure what it is, but definitely a pumpkin here. And then you can just see all the ladybugs still. We have so many ladybugs. And then this looks like some sort of gourd. Looks like ready to harvest too. So I'm wondering if maybe this ended up in the compost from last fall when I maybe had some gourds and tossed them in. So I guess that's what I get for putting squash seeds in the compost. Lesson learned. And right over here is our last bed. This is trash. But this has our peppers in it. So I think we're going to kind of leave this bed alone for a little bit longer too, just because the peppers are enjoying the weather. We're getting a lot of peppers right now. This is like a yellow wax, Hungarian wax pepper. Here, our shishitos have been really neglected. So I think we just need to kind of prune some of those off, some more of those. And then I just harvested these, but these have been our like picnic pepper type. But you can see now that it's cooler, they're starting to set a few more flowers. So that's that. And then our wild passion fruit vine is just crazy and it really needs a haircut. So that's kind of the skinny on how our yard and garden is looking at this time of year. We're excited now that the weather is a little bit better to get some of these seedlings out and planted soon. So we have them out right now just to kind of help get them acclimated to the temperature out here outside of the greenhouse. But yeah, everything's looking pretty good. A few things not the best, but we'll get them planted out and hopefully some of them will survive, and if not, we'll plant some starts. So all right, well, Lucas and I spent a couple hours cleaning out the garden. You can see we cleaned up a lot and it looks so different, but so good. I love the feeling of changing seasons and just being able to physically get your hands in the dirt and see it all. You can see here we ended up tearing out half of the tomatoes on that one side of the trellis that got just a lot more sun than the other side, a little bit more sun scald. So we tore that side out and just limbed up the other side there. So now that those 3 beds are cleaned up, we are going to harvest some compost to top dress before we plant anything in there. We're really, really happy to be able to use some of our own compost. It just saves us a lot of money, but it's also just nice to utilize some of that scrap that we've had. So if you're interested in composting, you don't already, we have a ton of videos about composting, but we just wanted to share a little bit on how we do that with you guys today. So Lucas built this 2-bin system, and I love having an area to add our greens and browns to while one side cooks. We've tried like the barrel method and it just didn't work for us, but we really like this. We can continually add while harvesting, and it's just a nice cycle. Using this system, we are able to harvest compost about every 3 to 4 months, depending on how much time we spend turning it. So you can see the one side is very full because we just cleaned out the garden. So we are harvesting the other side, and once we harvest it, we'll be able to shut that right side down and let it cook while we add to the left side. We also like to use this compost sifter. Because this is a backyard compost method, we don't get perfect compost, nor do we claim to, but we like the sifter because we can kind of sift out some of the stuff that needs more time. Like you can see, I'm pulling out some sticks. I'm also going to be pulling out some grubs. We don't want to add any grubs into our garden beds, or at least not all of them. Grubs are really good in your compost because they help break things down, but if you get too many of them in your garden beds, they will end up eating the roots of your plants, so you don't necessarily want them there. But they're not terrible, and you don't need to worry if you see them in your compost. Just simply pick them out. Chickens also love to eat grubs, so if you have chickens, it will be a nice tasty treat for them. But yeah, we just like to kind of sift through everything and then shake it on out. And if there's any like small remnants that aren't quite broken down, we don't need a perfect sift for us. We just like to get kind of those big items. We like to give them a little bit more time, but the small items will eventually break down even if we add them to our garden beds. They'll break down in the garden beds themselves, so we don't need perfection. We just don't want to have big old sticks to have to work around with our new seedlings. So we're just going to repeat this until we get a full wheelbarrow full, and then head on over to our garden bed and top dress, and then continue it until we're out of compost. So we ended up getting 2 full wheelbarrows of compost, which is pretty typical for us with the amount of output we have of green and browns in our garden and household. So we're just wheelbarrowing it over to our area and going to kind of rake out some of the straw that we use as a mulch. The straw that we get is just a compressed bale from Tractor Supply. We usually get 1 per year, and it covers all of our garden beds, plus we share it with some of our friends and family. So it's more than enough for us, but it's a good price. So we are just taking this out carefully and going to reuse it. And we usually bury some because it's hard to get it all out of there, but we want to reuse it for the fall season. And then in the spring, after all the rainy season, we will get a new bale. So you can see we're still picking out a bunch of grubs. We just have so many, and we're just kind of tossing them away. So we're grabbing our second load, and that's the rest of our compost. We are just going to edit this out because we don't need to bore you. I'm sure you get the idea. So you can see our back U-shaped bed, how we cleaned it out. We ended up pulling the cantaloupe and the cucumber and really trimmed up the center cut squash. We left a lot of the center cut squash in place just because we are still getting some of that squash to harden up, and we still have a few green squash cuttings, so we are just going to let that go and harvest a little bit more of that. This bed, we didn't have enough of our homemade compost to top dress, so we purchased some compost from the nursery to supplement this bed, and you can see just how good it looks when it has that black gold all laid up on top.
Alright, so we're going to start transplanting at least some of our starts. Everything's looking pretty good. The broccoli and the cauliflower, we have some romaine, some bok choy. It's a nice, cool, overcast day. We're supposed to get some rain tonight and tomorrow, so I think it's a perfect time that we get out and we start transplanting a few things and really get this, fall garden kicked off. The temps are supposed to be in the 80s during the day and the 50s during the night, so it's a perfect time to get everything growing. So let's get them into the garden and kind of start planning out where we're going to put things.
So you can see Lucas just kind of placing different starts in different locations. We always try to keep in mind the different sun placement that happens in the winter months compared to the summer months, because during the winter, that sun is a little bit lower in the sky. So just keep that in mind as you place some things. Our lettuces are going to have a little bit more shade, while some of the broccoli and cauliflower and things like that like a little bit more sun. And just think about spacing too. The tighter grouping, they are, the smaller they're going to be, but some plants like lettuces can be a little bit closer together, even bok choy. But things like cauliflower or cabbage like to be a little bit more spaced apart. Well, I'm going to end the episode here because the rain really started to come in before we got a whole lot planted. And I'm going to film the rest as a part 2, so be sure to stay tuned and check that out to see how we plant the rest, what fertilizers we use. We're also going to be doing a treatment of beneficial nematodes, so I'll include that all in next week's episode. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next week.